Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this time I'm gonna elaborate a bit why my WTC list did not as well as I had expected. So to the WTC in Germany and Osnabrück, I wanted to take a zombie dragon because I think zombie dragons are quite cool. And it's one of these fluffy pieces that you should get out of your cabinet from time to time. So the list that I was playing with was this one. So I took the decision to take the Zombie Dragon and take von Karnstein because it's also not played that much, and it gives you the very good option of getting Stormcaller, I thought. So Stormcaller is, I played around with it a little bit in the Dutch meta, and I found it quite nice because in the Dutch meta there's still quite a lot of shooting. So either people play quite aggressive lists or they play shooting, is what I usually encounter actually. Whilst defensive combat lists are not that much to be found. So Stormcaller played quite well into the Dutch meta that I encountered at least. And then the rest of the list basically followed from that. So I have a zombie dragon with a guy on top who is not the general because I think a zombie dragon is still quite a risky piece, especially for Vampire Covenant, where if you lose your general, you do struggle a bit more than with some other armies. Um, and then I basically play a Vampire Count who is able to take Stormcaller in a unit of Barrow Guard, and I thought that this looked quite okay. So basically we just have a couple of infantry blocks that are going to be raised by the Necromancers. You have the Necromancers also to heal the Zombie Dragon, and then you have some supporting pieces to help the list out with combat. So during the WTC, a lot of wacky stuff also happened in my games. I'm gonna call these basically poor excuses because I think that you can always blame the dice, and there's certainly situations in this list where I would say that they are not really the things that you would want to plan for. However, well, stuff happens, and um, even though I was a bit more grudgy at the time, I think I should also just admit that there was also some poor play maybe involved, and also some bad list design. So let's get to the real reasons. I think mostly this is going to be about list design for me. So I'm playing Vampire Covenant, however, I'm only fielding one adept and three apprentices, with no casting bonuses in a magical aligned army, because I was still quite relying quite a lot on raises. You can see that also from the fact that my skeleton blocks are not that big, so I have a 22 hand weapon shield unit, and then I have 30 spears, 30 spears. I do have three times the Dead Arise with the Necromancers because I had two Necromancer apprentices that were going to take Arise, and then I had Arise as a bounce spell on one of them to get to my three Arises. However, if you have to cast it on a 4+ or an 8+, without any casting bonus, I would normally throw 2 dice on a 4+, 3 dice on an 8+. 3 dice on an 8+ fails more often than I would assume. And it's really crippling to roll like a 7 with a 3 and a 2 and a 2, and then basically lose a spell for the round. So you either have to go for 4 dice on an 8, and then you really cripple your magic phase. You're only going to get one spell through realistically. And then the magic is just not good enough, to be honest. So I think if you really want to race, you should get the Book of Arcane Mastery and get a master. And probably just play Nosferatu. They are the masters of the races, and they will always stay that way with the Blood Magic upgrade. And otherwise, yeah, the magic, it did work in the sense that Hand of Glory is a really good spell to get a Aegis save on your skeletons or on the dragon, even though the dragon already has a 6-up regen. And well, Breath of Corruption is always great. Rot Within, I thought it would be great on the dragon, but then again, if that is your only really interesting spell, then it doesn't bring that much revenue. There's also a lot of matchups where it doesn't really matter because the dragon doesn't necessarily even get in combat because it's getting shot off, etc. So I think there was a bit of a mismatch there. And I did have the reroll to wound on an apprentice with spectral blades. However, with a dragon and a guy with strength 8, you don't really need reroll to wound. With vampire spawn, you don't really need reroll to wound. You'd rather have reroll to hit. And a Varkalak as well. And the vampire or the skeletons are not really putting out a lot of damage. So reroll to wound is not really the best spell to take along. Then we have, I think, maybe a comparable mistake of a comparable size, or even a bigger mistake, which is that I had a fast dragon, a fast Varkalak, and a fast vampire spawn unit, and I coupled it with very slow infantry, without any movement bonuses. So I didn't have anything in my line that was able to keep up with the fast dragon, Varkalak, and vampire spawn. So the points I paid in order to get the fast dragon, Varkalak, and vampire spawn were points that I didn't really make use of. So I couldn't really use the mobility of these 3 units, resulting in my army basically arriving in 2 waves if I were to play it aggressively. And I couldn't really play it defensively because I didn't really have any long-range threats, so I didn't have any magic to support my my army to get enemies closer towards me. So obviously the vampire spawn, they do threat quite a lot. However, they're also really matchup dependent. So if they face something that has a higher agility than them, then they really struggle. Apparently they also get beaten by 10 Briar Maidens if you charge in a unit of 6, I believe, at that point. So yeah, it's a bit of a mismatch in mobility, I would say. And then well, most of the games they resulted in the dragon trying to go in, the Varkalak going in, and the vampire spawn, and then afterwards me basically nearly always losing all 3 of them, and then the rest just arriving at that time only to the enemy army, and then either the enemy still having his chaff available or just nothing happening in general really, except for the cases where I got completely annihilated. So the Barrow Guard was also, it's a good unit. However, if it's the main combat unit you have, they are not good enough, I would say. So you still struggle with having defensive 3 and resilience 4 or 5 of armor. So resilience 3 is a pain on an elite unit, or defensive 3, sorry, is a pain on an elite unit. Resilience 4 is nice, however, it's not going to save you from real damaging units. And then only a 5 of armor is often negated by the enemy. So it's quite common that you get a very big hit on your Barrow Guard before you get to strike. Something like losing 12 bodies or more is quite common, I would say. And then obviously with the Banner of Zagvost and the Great Weapons, you do quite some damage back. However, they are really dicey rolls that you're making. So your to-hit roll with 12 attacks, if you're 6 wide, is hitting normally on 3+, because, well, nobody has defense 7 or higher on their infantry or other combat units. So you're hitting on 3+, winning with strength 6 with AP 3 and lethal strike. So you are doing quite a decent amount of wounds. However, once you run into something with, for example, an Aegis, then you already just eliminate a lot of your damage. Whilst you're still losing damage yourself. So the count in the Barrow Guard, that worked quite well to try to raise them back up. However, the defenses on the Barrow Guard were not high enough, I would say. So I would either in the future play them with the Hypnotic Pendant to get them to parry, or play them with a shield or with the Commandment of the Lamia to get them to defense 6 and offense 6. I would say that offense 6 with the Banner of Zagvost is quite nice, because then you have a 2+2 hit in nearly all cases. And I did like the great weapons. They did really do some damage. I think I would prefer them over halberds because halberds with agility 3 doesn't really make sense. But yeah, just looking at hand weapon shield also seems kind of okay because of that parry that you get. But in the end, I don't know. It's a big unit feels like too much of a commitment, and the extra bodies are actually quite expensive. So maybe I would actually prefer smaller units. However, a unit of 15 barrel guard, I don't know. I don't know if MSU Vampire Covenant would work. You could try to pull it off, and maybe it works. I don't know. I'm a bit unsure about that one. So one of the problems I already mentioned was that I didn't really have any very long range threats. So that really turned it into a list where I felt like I needed to go towards my opponent because I basically had to take the initiative because I didn't have any long-term plan in case nothing really happened in the game. So the only thing I could do was to hold back and raise back. But then I would allow my opponent to outmaneuver me because basically the entire army is 4 infantry blocks with support pieces, and the infantry blocks are not mobile enough. So I didn't have any ranged threats really meaningful to put a hurt on my opponent. And yeah, the last thing is just experience with list. So that would be inaccurate pairings. And yeah, that I also did plenty, I think. So that is a point that I could use to learn. Then I'm gonna talk quickly about list improvements. So I have two possible lists in mind. So the first one is basically what everybody is playing with a zombie dragon, which is a Nosferatu list because then you can raise your count back up quite easily. I'm not gonna put in any detail on how to build your Nosferatu Vampire Covenant Dragon list because there's plenty of examples online. I would say, however, that I think personally that Nosferatu is better played without a dragon, because then your caster is at a lower risk, because even a single swarm of insects can kill your dragon, as can a single Rod of God. um, and then the other alternative that I have would be an independent list, where basically you just go full aggro onto your opponent. So you not only you bring the fast dragon, just the dragon, the Varkalak, and the vampire spawn, you also bring on turn one already a unit of skeletons. That's at nearly max size, with the banner of the Relentless Company, and you also bring a unit of Baronites with vampire in there, and a unit of Bat Swarm. So why the Bat Swarm? Because it's the only other core unit that can advance faster than 8 inches in Vampire Covenant if you don't take a Bloodline power. So you could go for Strigoi, but then you don't get to get a Zombie Dragon, you get a Tower Geist, Shrieking Horror instead. And you also are playing Strigoi, so you're very vulnerable to Flaming Staff, I would say. So the list that I'm currently looking at, it does have a bit of limited magic again, but it's not planning on raising any models. It's just mostly focusing on combat buffs, getting in there, getting in quickly. Because what my experience was also is that Stormcaller does help you the survival of your dragon. However, it is gonna happen that your opponent is gonna hit your dragon with heavy artillery, and then it is gonna die eventually. So your opponent will only need 1/6 or 5, depending on the situations, under Stormcaller with a cannon, and that is gonna happen. You're not gonna do anything about that. And in the worst case, your dragon gets 5 wounds in one go. Chances are that if your opponent has a cannon, he is gonna try to put some wounds from time to time on your dragon, and it is really a struggle to keep your dragon within 12 inches of a necromancer unless you play a very defensive army. Because if you play offensive, then you really want to use the mobility of your dragon to get somewhere. And yeah, it's just not possible with a Necromancer, because a Necromancer has only a March of 8. You can give him the Ranger boots to get him to March 12. It does help, but you still have to have a unit that your Necromancer can go in order to make this work. So in the end, in my opinion, it's not really the way to play this. Those are basically my conclusions after the WTC. I don't think I'm gonna play around actually with a dragon for some time now, or at least not with a zombie dragon. So I'm gonna switch around to a different army again to try something else. But if I'm ever gonna pick up my zombie dragon again, I'm definitely gonna go for the last list here shown in the video. With that, I will end this, and then yeah, if you have any comments, just let me know. Send me a message, send me a comment, or send me a message on the forum.